My flight attendant daughter's trembling voice delivered impossible news. David was on her flight to Italy, yet I could hear his footsteps upstairs. Before we begin, like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the ceiling where familiar footsteps moved about. My daughter, Sarah, worked international flights, and she'd never called me like this. Voice tight, words rushing together. Sarah's professional composure cracked as she described checking the passenger's passport 3 times. Same name, same face, same birth date. David Harrison, my younger daughter Emma's husband, the man who'd been living under my roof for 3 years. The coffee maker gurgled its final drops. My hands shook as I gripped the phone. In 30 years of motherhood, I'd learned to trust my instincts. Something was terribly wrong. I could hear the swing set's chains creaking softly in the morning breeze, the same swing where my 5-year-old granddaughter Lily played every day. Everything sounded exactly as it should on a quiet Tuesday morning, except my older daughter was telling me something impossible. The impossible became possible in that moment. 2 identical men, living 2 different lives, and I was caught between them. The bedroom door opened upstairs. Emma's sleepy laugh drifted down, followed by David's deeper voice mentioning breakfast plans. My hand trembled as I gripped the counter. Sarah described a man in expensive business attire, nothing like our struggling David in old sweatshirts. But what she said next made my blood run cold. Sarah mentioned a detail only family would know: the small scar above his left eyebrow from when he'd fallen off Emma's bike trying to impress her on their 3rd date. The man on her plane had that exact scar. She'd gotten close enough to see it while checking his boarding pass. So who was making pancakes upstairs? Footsteps on the stairs now. I promised Sarah I'd call back, my voice barely steady, then slipped the trembling phone into my pocket. David appeared in the doorway, hair messy from sleep, wearing the faded Yankees shirt Emma bought him last Christmas. He smiled at me. That easy, charming smile I'd always found reassuring. Behind him, Emma carried Lily on her hip. My granddaughter reached for me, and I took her automatically, her small fingers playing with my necklace. David poured himself coffee, asked if I wanted more. Such a normal morning gesture. I watched his hands, steady, familiar, wearing the simple wedding band Emma had chosen. Nothing fancy, she'd said, just something that meant forever. I made breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice for Lily. David talked about needing to leave early for a meeting with a potential client for his struggling consulting business. Emma reminded him about Lily's doctor appointment next week. Every word, every gesture seemed perfectly natural, perfectly David. Yet 30,000 feet above us, another David was heading to Italy. The thing about living with someone is you notice patterns. David's meeting days always fell on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He'd leave at 10, return by 6. He kept his laptop in the same spot, hung his keys on the same hook, kissed Emma goodbye the same way. Quick peck on the forehead, hand briefly touching her shoulder. After they finished eating, after David left for his meeting and Emma took Lily to the park, I made a call I never thought I'd make. Marcus, a detective who'd worked with my late husband years ago, listened without interrupting. He'd always been good at that, letting silence do the heavy lifting. When I finished, he simply said he'd look into it. I'd never questioned someone's identity before. How do you prove the person you've known for years isn't who they claim to be? 3 days felt like 3 years. I watched David eat dinner, help Lily with her coloring books, rub Emma's feet while they watched TV. I cataloged every moment, every word, searching for cracks in the facade. But he was perfect. The ideal son-in-law, the loving husband, the playful father. Thursday afternoon, David left for another meeting. 20 minutes later, Marcus called. His voice carried that careful tone professionals use when delivering devastating news. I sat on the porch steps listening to Lily's swing chains creaking in the distance as he explained what he'd found. The detective's discovery was worse than I imagined. David had an identical twin brother. But that wasn't the worst part. Daniel, posing as David, had been living our family life for 6 months while the real David built a fortune in secret. The twin switch explained everything: David's sudden meetings, the expensive clothes Sarah described, the perfect knowledge of our family routines, how Daniel knew exactly which coffee mug David used, which side of the bed he slept on, how he laughed at Lily's jokes. The arrangement was simple and cruel. Daniel would cover for David during his business trips, maintaining the illusion of the struggling husband while David traveled the world, setting up accounts, moving money, building a new life. The plan's endpoint was clear. David intended to disappear completely, leaving Daniel to break the news of his sudden departure to Emma. Marcus had bank records, travel documents, even surveillance footage from various airports showing David boarding flights while Daniel entered our house. 6 months of elaborate deception, requiring military precision and complete betrayal of trust. The meeting he'd claimed for that afternoon was actually a flight to Switzerland, where most of his money waited. I sat there, phone heavy in my hand, watching a cardinal land on our fence. The weight of Marcus's words hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. 6 months of lies shared at my dinner table, bedtime stories read to Lily, family conversations where nothing was real. Emma would be home in an hour. Lily would need her snack. Daniel would return at 6, playing his brother's part, expecting to continue the charade until David gave the signal. The urge to scream, to break something, to drive to the airport and confront one brother or the other burned in my chest. But I thought of Emma's laugh this morning, the way she'd looked at the man she thought was her husband, the trust in her eyes. I thought of Lily, who called him Daddy and ran to the door whenever she heard his key. Marcus offered to handle everything legally, properly. There were crimes here: fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. But as I watched the cardinal fly away, I made a different choice. Emma deserved the truth, but she deserved to hear it properly with proof she couldn't deny or explain away. And David, the real David, deserved to face what he'd done. I called Sarah first, told her to document everything on her flight, get whatever information she could. Then I called my sister, the lawyer, and explained what we needed to do. By the time Daniel walked through the door that evening, playing his role perfectly, I had everything in motion. What happened in that kitchen still haunts me. It was Sunday dinner, a week after Sarah's call. I'd invited everyone: Sarah home from her flights, my sister with her briefcase of documents, Marcus waiting outside if needed. Emma had made her grandmother's lasagna. Lily wore her favorite purple dress. Daniel sat in David's chair, laughing at Sarah's stories about difficult passengers. My heart pounded so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. This moment would split our family's timeline into before and after. I stared at that manila folder, knowing it held the power to destroy my daughter's world. But lies had already destroyed it. I was just revealing the damage. I placed the folder on the table between the salad and the garlic bread. Such an ordinary manila folder, the kind you'd use for taxes or school papers. Daniel's eyes flickered to it, then away. He reached for his wine glass, but his hand hesitated for just a moment. If I opened it, our family would never be the same. Emma asked what was in the folder. I told her the truth. Evidence that the man sitting across from her wasn't her husband, hadn't been her husband for many of the past 6 months. The silence that followed felt like standing in an empty cathedral. Even Lily stopped humming, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. Daniel, still pretending to be David, didn't deny it. Maybe he was tired of pretending, or maybe he recognized the weight of evidence in that folder. He set down his wine glass carefully, precisely, and looked at Emma. For the first time since this began, I saw him as Daniel, not David. Something in his eyes was different. Sadder, maybe, or just more honest. He told her everything. How David had contacted him, desperate and excited about his success, but terrified of change. How David believed Emma would try to control the money, would become someone different if she knew about the wealth. how he'd promised Daniel a cut to play this role, to be the struggling husband while David built his empire. Emma didn't cry. She stood up, walked to the counter, and poured herself water with steady hands. Then she asked Daniel where David was right now. Daniel pulled out his phone, showed her the tracking app they used to coordinate. David was in Monaco, had been for 3 days. My sister laid out the legal options, the divorce papers she'd already drawn up, the fraud charges they could file, the financial documentation showing David's hidden assets. Emma listened to everything, still standing by the counter, still holding that glass of water she hadn't drunk. The truth about those 6 months broke us all. Emma made her decision that night. She would divorce David, take what she was legally entitled to, and move forward. No drama, no revenge, just the quiet justice of legal consequence. Daniel agreed to testify, to provide all the evidence needed. He seemed relieved, actually, to stop being his brother's shadow. The divorce proceeded faster than anyone expected. David, caught completely off guard in Monaco, tried to salvage something, anything. He flew back, showed up at the house at 2 a.m., banging on the door, claiming he could explain. Emma watched from her bedroom window, but didn't go down. I stood in the hallway, phone in hand, ready to call Marcus if needed. David's lawyer convinced him to settle. The hidden assets, the fraud, the identity theft, fighting would only make things worse. Emma got primary custody of Lily, the house, and a settlement that would secure their future. It was exactly what David had feared would happen if she'd known about the money from the beginning. The last time I saw David was at the final custody hearing. He looked smaller, somehow, diminished. The expensive suit didn't fit quite right, or maybe it was just that we all knew what was underneath now. He tried to approach Emma afterward, but she simply turned and walked away, Lily's hand in hers. Daniel disappeared after the divorce was finalized. He'd testified as promised, provided all the evidence, then vanished. Sometimes I wonder if he ever thinks about those 6 months, about the family dinners where he sat in his brother's place, about Lily calling him daddy. Emma and Lily still live with me. We repainted the kitchen last month, changed the curtains. Small things that make the space feel new. Emma started her own business, something she'd always dreamed about but never had the confidence to try. She's different now, stronger but more careful, like someone who's learned to test the ice before stepping forward. Sarah visits more often, brings stories from her flights that make Lily laugh. She never mentions that flight to Italy, but sometimes I catch her studying Emma's new boyfriend with unusual intensity, like she's memorizing his features just in case. 6 months after the divorce, we heard the news through Marcus. David had lost everything in Monaco. Bad investments, gambling, spectacular financial collapse. He was back in the States, staying with distant relatives, trying to rebuild. The exact fate he'd tried so hard to avoid had found him anyway. Some nights, I stand in the kitchen where it all unraveled, and I think about that morning call from Sarah. One phone call that exposed 6 months of lies. I think about trust, how it's built slowly, grain by grain like sand castles, and how quickly it washes away. But mostly, I watch Emma with Lily, see the way she's teaching her daughter to be strong, to be smart, to trust but verify. And I think maybe that's the real justice. Not what happened to David, but what didn't happen to Emma. She didn't break. She didn't become bitter. She just became careful, and maybe that's all any of us can do. The cardinal still visits our fence most mornings, proof that not everything is performance. Would you have opened that folder at Sunday dinner? Or would you have let the lie continue, choosing comfort over truth?